it's a sad deal, cause there isn't any, they leave and there ain't nothing you can do, and there's about this much space in between the cars down there around the city. It's just a pain in the butt. Luckily, we don't have to go back in there anymore, at least not for a while. I won't park there again. Or I'll go clear up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's smaller.
Yeah.
You can get out those doors.
Don't be scared to hit that one.
I got a new, insurance adjuster for my semi, my tractor and trailer. A gal, and she said, I sent pictures. She said, well, is there anything wrong with it? I see you got a cracked windshield. Oh no, it's just fine. It's
The
just,
one that blew over,
yeah.
that's so she could see typically.
That's what she could see was the windshield. So, yeah.
She actually came out, huh?
No. Like she did. Made a phone call. Yeah. Well, I'm guessing it's told because the cab's gonna be racked. Once they get it over, it depends on the company, whether or not it twists the frame on the tractor or the trailer.
No, that's no big deal.
Because they're hooked together. Yeah, I know. We've seen vehicles go down the road like that.
Yeah, you gotta try and stay in your lane. It takes the whole lane though,
Yeah.
maybe a little more.
Followed the car down the road the other day like that. Oh my God.
Oh man, you ought to see yesterday, there was about 12 cars toward the end of the 4-lane. They got in a bad accident.
Really?
And then, where Sauce used to live.
Yeah, semi.
Yeah.
That's why I was telling Rick, I said, I was gonna call you yesterday, that he can flag them, wreckers when they come through Benton, cause they were out of Waterloo. He could have flagged them down and got a semi set back up on his wheel.
There was 3 of them.
Let's see our steep foot bill.
There was 3 wreckers. One hooked onto the truck, and then one hooked onto the wrecker, and another one hooked onto the wrecker. I know what happened. Somebody was watching their GPS. They pulled down in that dirt road. There was no way they were gonna get out, so they decided they were gonna keep going, and they ended up in the ditch.
Moose used to hook onto a tree or a utility pole.
Yeah, we're gonna have to tell weed commissioner to leave a few trees in the ditch so the records got something to hook on to.
We'll start with those 4 walnut trees.
I got that squash, so it's just.
It is streaming too, it is.
Yeah, I figured it would be. Usually starts 5 or 10 minutes
I
early.
know. It's one.
What are these land acquisitions?
They
There's land down at Norway for the bridge. The Memphis. You just signed them all off here 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know where they live, they're on the corner.
Some was permanent, some was temporary, wasn't it?
Mhm.
But,
Did you, look at that, wood chipper down in Norway?
No, I haven't yet. I've been up here this weekend.
How much damage was there? Did you get hit, Rick?
yeah.
How bad is it?
Oh, we had 27 doors
Oh, man.
and we got,
We'll wait till Mark comes in.
okay.
I think he's waiting for somebody to come
Yeah,
along.
the process.
Are they here, Mark?
No.
No, not yet.
No.
We'll start then.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second.
All in favor of approving both sets of minutes from last week?
Aye.
Aye. And about claims,
The only question I had was already answered.
okay?
So,
I got a couple. First page, halfway down, Benton, uniform allowance, almost $1,200.
First page,
Yep, first page.
Benton.
Yeah.
Oh, Sue Sales Company, yeah, she's the gal, who's or deputy we have,
$1,200.
probably to get all the.
Fireman.
Okay. Yes.
I was looking for that as the vendor, sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah,
good for me.
you got it. The only thing I was gonna come in, I'm patting myself on the back, which I probably shouldn't. Transportation utilities, the heating and gas, so I got a figure, was only $386 for electricity and gas for that big building.
Wow. What month was that? February?
Yeah.
And that was the cold month, so.
Huh?
That was a cold, bad month.
$386 for that big building.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I got.
We'll buy the building just in savings.
So then I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright, so let me do the canvas quick.
Yeah.
This is the big one.
Yeah.
So this was for the Center Point Urbana Schools public measure. So I gave you a printout here.
Oh.
So there was 90 yes votes, 28 no's, no undervotes and no overvotes, and no absentees. So I think we need a formal motion for you to approve that, and we can sign the canvases. We can do that after the meeting.
So moved.
And I would second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And since Lynn County is the control county, then ours go to them and then they'll canvass.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll please remember to everybody sign before you get them there.
And just pass it around.
I have,
Just well.
I think we got a couple minutes.
Yeah.
remember where to sign, you just sign here, Tracy in the top. Just like you would as.
And you got claims to sign also.
Yep, and here's one more on that one. Is Mark on that second? I don't know if you're sending that. You guys kind of do yours separately, don't they?
Well, there wasn't much on there for us, cause we have to go to the stuff in January, environmental health stuff down
Two places to sign.
Really? And this one, there's 4 spots, do the 3.
Yeah, just you start hot, some
Start at the
supervisors
top.
have 5, yeah.
Tracy, you gotta hit the second page.
First page, he's
ones, so I'll minimize that one for sure.
I hope so.
But do you want me to leave one in full, so there's an extra notification? I don't remember what I decided on that. So I'll send it. Not just leave one. Leave
I
it
don't
in.
remember, see, you and I discussed that.
Maybe I'll email it before I send it. I just don't wanna, I mean, it's
Double
not,
it up.
I don't think that much on that one, but,
No, I didn't
yeah.
want to double it up, that's what I would go right on.
I'll see if I'll answer it.
Thank you.
Tracy? Then we can put our pen together. At least temporarily.
We were just talking about that, aren't we?
Just remember what I said.
I'd like to set a land use hearing for Ronald and Tamara Wagner for Tuesday, April 5th at 9:20.
9:20,
Yes, please.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
Atkins address, 2 miles outside normal stops.
Don't you live in that property just north of it?
Is that?
You live in that property just north of Norway? And it's an Atkins address?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah.
I thought it was Norway. Good. That's what I thought it. On the property restriction, is that where you're at?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's where they currently, yeah.
Yeah, and it says Norway on there. That's why I thought that.
Yeah.
So it's on.
We've gotta wait. That's all we're doing. We have
Sounds good to
time
me.
scheduled.
He says they have to wait till 9:15.
Anything else you need? Anybody have any other meetings last week?
I don't have any reports.
I worked the weekend, hanging drywall farm. Was out to conservation yesterday afternoon, blueprints. It started anyway, that's the way I can say it. And trying to figure everything out and make it work and
Are they gonna, tear them bathrooms down?
on the shower side, yes, that's what they're leaning on right now. We're gonna start from scratch for everything we do because Mark does not have basically any kind of where everything is down there. Or what's even down there for a septic or
Where's that?
Cannon Lake.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we even thought about, we talked through the idea of even putting it on the west side of the lake where the house used to be and all that, and I'm not for that. We kind of,
Is there any septic or anything? There's gotta be, septic system on the west side someplace where that house used to be.
there's actually, there again, nobody has any knowledge. There's a septic tank where the old house is, and they think that it's hooked up to that, where it used to be the trailer house. Okay, and then there's also a dumping station there, a holding tank. Where does that go? Mark has no,
My memory is that the house had like a single drain line that paralleled the parking lot from way back when, like '70s. There was a tank with a leach field line in the middle, which wouldn't be proper today, but nonetheless, it's 40+ years old, so.
and then, don't they have a catch basin or another tank that catches the shower house? What I was informed yesterday,
The shower house up on the other side
on top of the hill, by
of the beach,
yes,
on the east side of the lake.
yes.
Yeah, and that dates back to who knows when, probably.
See, nobody knows where it is,
No,
I said,
there is
instead
absolutely.
of digging and hunting and looking and praying, and you'd be able to just start from scratch so you know where everything is.
I would bet you that it probably ends up exiting down at the bottom of that hill somewhere.
Why the fish are bigger down there. Okay, we're close enough, Mark.
And tasty too.
I've given you a copy of an application for change in land use from Luke and Stephanie Cross. This is Luke and Stephanie right here. Haley Ripples, our county auditor, Tracy Seaman, Gary Deershank, and Rick Brimmer, our board. They'd like to change the use of 2.5 acres of land. It's located in northeast to the southeast, section 25. You're right here, on just north of Highway 30, Fremont Township, on the west side of Benton Road there. The parent parcel here is 4.44 acres. It is owned by Ruth and Richard Kim. Ruth is Luke's mother. And they'd like to construct a dwelling on this site, and they'd like to have that to be located more towards the southwest corner of the property. And you can see that on the attached aerial, basically where they want to build. This site obviously is not an ag production. The soil basically consists of some loam and silt loam here. Has slopes between 1% and 9% slope. The majority of the property has a CSR that's in the range of 30 to 72, but it's not really relevant because again, the site is not in production. It's part of the old farmstead here. The proposed dwelling is going to utilize the existing driveway that already exists for the acreage, meets all of Benton County policy requirements. A new septic system is going to be needed here. We do not anticipate any problems with that, other than the fact that with that particular soil type, it being a silt loam, it can be a little bit tight, and there always is the possibility that we'd have to construct what's called a sand filter system there. But again, I don't look for any problems with that. They plan to connect to Powell Sheep Water. We're on, as I said, part of the original farmstead here, that was split off of the farm ground lots of years ago. And so basically, as far as the adjoining land uses, we have ag land, cropland, basically all around this. Up in the very northeast corner of the section, there is a cluster of some homes up on the west side of the road and wraps around back on going towards Atkins on 72nd Street. There's some other rural dwellings out in the area. When we visited this site, the only thing that we found in regards to this project that I thought required a little attention is when we visited the site, there's obviously quite a little bit, and you can see it on the aerial, there's quite a little bit of solid waste lying about premises. And when I say solid waste, right in the area where the house is going to be, there's some tires piled and there's just some miscellaneous junk there. And we contacted Luke and Stephanie about it, because I wanted them to be able to put their best foot forward with being able to have this land use change and not bring something that I didn't know what the plan was, in other words, and so I contacted them. Luke got back with me right away. They want to have this cleaned up, they plan to have it cleaned up. They actually sent me a statement that they are going to clean it all up, a written statement signed. It's part of the remainder of the derecho. Some of the stuff was in the buildings and they have no desire to have it left like that. And like I said, they've committed to it, have their statement in writing, so I have no issue with that whatsoever. They plan on to be working on that in the upcoming season here. So I just wanted to mention that to you. We notified 3 adjacent property owners of this request, and of course we published legal notices in the newspapers that we are required to do. We received no calls concerning this. This proposal is located on family land. Site's not in production. I don't see it interfering with any agricultural operations in the area at all. So basically, all in all, it's a good fit. So, Luke or Stephanie, is there anything that you want to tell the board?
No.
I don't have anything further.
I notice on the left side, there's a blue line that goes, it don't look like it, I don't know, it goes through the building on the top. See this blue line right there?
Yes.
Goes through that building. It don't look like the property lines are.
You can't always go by these aerials when the property line's laid in there. They've taken a picture of that, and that looks like half of that. If it's a trailer or whatever it is up in the very northwest corner, that looks like that's hanging over. I wouldn't worry about that. These lines don't always match up with what, if indeed it's been surveyed years ago. I don't know if it was or not, but I don't see that as an issue. A lot of that miscellaneous junk that's lying about is gonna be coming out of there anyway, so they know where the parameters of their acreage are, and you can see the definition of the farm field right there, so. I don't
Looks like
think
a
that's
fence
big.
row right there.
No.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, like a trailer.
And I would second that motion.
All in favor of granting the land use hearing for change? Aye. Aye. There you go, guys.
Alright, thank you.
Oh, you got
Yep.
newspaper in there.
What'd you say?
Oh, you got newspaper though.
Yeah, does that come with this too? No? Oh, okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
There you go.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Let me know when it's time.
Okay, sounds good.
Take care.
Thank you.
Boy, it seems like we can't get rid of the wind, can we?
You know, it was blowing stronger, Saturday night after we came through.
know,
We
you
had
guys
no
heard.
wind, we had no rain at our house, we had nothing. Mark said, "You going to the basement?" I said, "No." You went down there, I said, "It's not even raining,
There's
the
all three
wind
over
isn't
there.
blowing," so I didn't know what was going on.
Blew your way, didn't
My mom called me from the basement because they're in that side of town.
Yeah.
She was like,
Yeah.
here, get to the basement, it's that horrible.
Yep.
It was
Mark,
strange.
you
We've
know,
been through before.
we don't have enough damage in the county for a proclamation, do we?
We got it.
Benton County.
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
declared a
complained, but I
disaster.
just hope we don't.
I don't know what the limit is.
Well, basically, if you got,
That's
if you do not have insurance, you can apply.
There's a income based, is that what it is,
Yeah,
pretty
it's-
much?
I didn't know, like, with Myron, I don't know how much his damage was total yet.
It
None of
said
the
something
house.
about you're
It
supposed to
was
go
all
to your
out there
own
in
insurance
West
company
Eastern.
first.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I just didn't know if we knew what threshold, like, I'll have to
I
talk to
was-
Scott.
I was
But we
curious
went
about
through,
that too.
it was not a straight line road.
No.
Yeah, I thought that's when we drove by when we went to Mom Sunday, because some of those buildings out there were junk, it didn't even touch it.
Couldn't figure out how we got so much debris inside the buildings. And it's from the rotation.
It looked like it snowed over there right there, from all the insulation.
There was a lot of insulation out there. Had part of their building go through one of the rooftops of my trailers. So shoved some of the trailers together. Of course, the tractor trailer went over. Took some of the interior walls in that storage building.
Oh.
Yeah, it pulled them right in. So
Did the secondary roads?
Yeah, I haven't
secondary
heard
roads
total.
had issues.
Yeah, quite a few, they even moved, you see where it moved some of those culverts?
Oh, yeah.
Cement culverts, aren't those heavy?
No, they're galvanized.
Well, they roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
So,
The tractor that laid over had a trailer attached to it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what flopped it over then?
well, I'm assuming that's what pushed her over, is the, more the trailer than the tractor.
Yeah, I was gonna say, boy, that sounded like a lot of wind.
It had to be substantial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot,
Thanks.
guys.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Biggest thing is we got insulation stuff and everything.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
The worst of it is cleaning it up, you gotta.
Yeah.
We still got rain guns that are screwed up. Got everything picked up out of the field.
Last page of that is their proposed. That's the current.
What's this $100 here?
That's, now it says right there, it used to be like 35 or 25 or something. And
35.
it bumped up. And I think it says what it's for.
Are you gonna try to go to Des Moines this week? No?
I'm trying.
Well, I knew you mentioned it, but I wasn't sure.
It's all day Thursday.
And mine's all day Friday too. I start tomorrow, I'm going to the Capitol for the county day, we have our booth, and then We have our ISAC, our business meeting at 4:30.
tomorrow.
I do.
I've got a meeting tomorrow with,
Well, yeah, your supervisor stuff will be, if you don't go to the Capitol Defend Day. Somebody wants to go stand at the supervisor group. We're providing,
You have a problem saying no. I'm sure you're gonna go.
No.
here, yes, ma'am, come on.
Sarah bought the paint last week already, so.
Oh, so she's ready. They're ready to get going, huh? I might run over to Penny quick, if you have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
Hey, how about we just make a motion to adjourn for
Well, I don't
3 minutes?
understand all that.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
It's just a pain. You can talk some budgeting stuff.
I'm sure we will.
I never thought of that. We paid for their training.
says they can't get reimbursed.
Yeah, but we paid their training too here just in January, they went to St.
Right.
Louis. We put the bill for that. I'm just going by what the other counties have been paying.
Did you hear how much snow we're supposed to get tomorrow?
Great.
Anywhere you want.
Anywhere you'd like, Tyler. I like this chair.
Find out this. That's kinda how we got started here anyway. This was the first one I grew up. It's gonna get scratched.
Why are we looking at it?
Well,
That's one of those word arms that kind of, so it's not
it,
that was just a.
It's not the finished product.
no, it's far from it.
Yeah.
The shower, and they want the new shower house, you know, I wanna move it over here on this side, cause this is where the interior restrooms are gonna be, for the
Okay.
offices and everything.
Which makes sense.
This is gonna face towards the Hannah Lake, this will fit, what, the lake will be over here, down here, you know. What they don't like about it, because see, what I wanted to do is put this in the corner here. It'd be easier for the plumbing to hook this all up. And then divide the building this way.
Okay.
Okay, then put it,
Why do they wanna, why is this divided this way?
because one's gonna be heated, one's gonna be cold storage. What? To me, I don't
This side
think,
would be heated, this side would be cold storage?
well, this one at the south side cold storage, cause I wanted the doors facing south. I do not want any doors, anything to the north of the building.
Right.
You know, put a door over here to come out on this side, well,
That makes sense for this to go over there too.
okay, what they don't like about it is that then you have parking over here, kinda where the shower house is right now. Well, then people will come in here to use that shower house here, why, this is gonna be the door to get into this section here that's heated. They don't want, I'm trying to figure out how, you know, to put the shower house connected to the building, but yet where the people come in and use the shower house, they're not gonna be crossing the line of traffic, coming in the doors.
Sure.
And that's the problem, you know, and then,
Move it over to the north side.
How's it going?
Good stuff.
Put this over here.
I have something on there for you?
Over
No.
here.
But it fits
we
with
talked
our
about that.
That's fine.
Put
I didn't
on
bother
this
you
side
yesterday.
here.
Right. Like it is.
Okay.
I had a few calls, I screened
Put
it
the
for you
bathroom
yesterday morning.
just flop this
They
back
were
and
worried that
forth.
files were
Yeah.
gonna come out because of the damage.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, they're coming.
So your office is there, and it's still
Well,
like.
Okay, okay, then we got to move the building to the,
Oh,
Few extra people that
we're
were
gonna move the building to the
outside.
south end of the parking lot then, and then have the people park
Yeah.
over here.
We'll have your people park on the north side. here.
melt it off
Building.
quick enough at least, thankfully.
Because they're only gonna be there during the summer,
Right.
okay? And have your doors on the south side, like you were talking. Make this half the heated, this half the unheated, because then you've got warm walls against your office and
Right.
utility, et cetera.
That's what, you know, they wanted 40-foot or 48-foot deep so they can pull the pickup and trailer in together.
Sure.
Which I understand that. You know,
So you would stretch it out just as goes that way.
right,
And that wouldn't hurt. And would it hurt to move this up to the edge here?
that's what I wanna do.
Yeah.
Now, see, the only bad thing there again, I think why I said, you're gonna have your doors in the winter time to the north.
But again, they're not gonna use them.
Yeah. still wanna heat it, that's the whole deal. It ain't like they can, they wanna shut the water off.
Why is there a problem turning the valve?
They wanna heat it, well, like for the fishery that they just had here 2 weeks ago.
Ryan, do you recall with the,
But
noxious
they
weed
turn the heat
notices,
on.
you have to publish the resolution?
Yeah.
I mean, why heat it
So if
year
he does it,
round?
I can minimize
I
it in
mean,
my minutes, or should I
all
just leave it in
winter
my
for
minutes
just
for,
See, they
2
want,
days.
they want this a block
they
built.
get back to me before I send them to the minutes?
Well, if it's insulated, it won't hardly require any heat.
No, it won't, but I said block building though, you're gonna have to. So
I
like
have to
here,
start it out.
yeah,
I don't remember how I did it, I can go back and try to see what I did
and
last
it's gonna be a shower house, you know. where they can
Whether
actually
we
get a shower.
have to or not, I believe we
Well,
have
and if it's
more for extra.
studded out,
Yeah.
then you're gonna have to
published
put
blockade.
material on the wall that would take the moisture,
Mm-hmm.
where the block, you wouldn't have to worry about it. So if
I think he has to.
then I say,
I
well, what do you
knew,
want?
I knew he had to do the notice.
Yeah, I was
But I
thinking,
didn't know
if
if I
the
should
guy built a brick
Confirm that it was done, but I don't know.
stick building,
I'll wait a
and
little
it
bit.
was steel on the outside.
Duplicate it,
and put
that's
the
where I
block
cut
building
costs
on
if I
the inside,
minimize my
you know what I mean?
It sounds like a lot of extra expense.
I know, I know.
Just shut the damn heat
I mean,
off.
what we have
all but 2
advertised
days.
has been just blockade, I think.
Yeah,
Take the precaution, just shut the water off, winterize the stuff, and then for the fish or eat, open it up.
Oh, okay, I remember why they don't want it here, because see, they got the 2 windows here in the office, they can sit here and watch the park.
Well, Benton is our side, most entities that do something, do get published.
They can't watch it.
That's what I figured.
That's why they're moving it, that's why they're moving it over here.
Yeah.
With the minutes. of
okay,
the-
I'll just leave it in, it's not gonna,
So
it won't hurt anything.
it really would make sense.
Yeah, like I said, regardless, I like to have this together with this, that would save so much time on trenching, your water lines, your utility rooms right here. And like I said, there's no need to have a water heater here and a water heater here.
Right.
So by the time, hot water would get over here, you're gonna run 10, 15 gallons of this raw water, PW down there, so.
Yeah.
That's why I was trying to, let's move this, keep it next to the bathroom where everything is together. But yet, they don't want the people walking around, they got a door over here. They want parking over here, like the staff parks in front of the building, just to be away from the edge of the roll of the hill.
Can you incorporate this inside the building some way?
Yeah, I thought of that too.
Because does the break room have to be this large? Does the utility room have to be this large?
The utility room ain't that big though, 7 or 16.
Right.
When you start thinking water heater, you're gonna have probably at least a 50 gallon, if not 80 gallon water heater. And then your, furnace,
That ain't very big room, big room.
no,
I mean, that's about from here to the
No.
wall.
7.5 by 16. So it's 16 feet
Yeah.
at the length,
And all
Is
your
there any
service-
way that is this gonna be one
bathroom.
unisex?
Yes.
Incorporated into here? What's it take? I mean, all you have is a stall, a urinal, and a sink. Yeah.
Put it on the west side of the lake.
And then you gotta start taking off. Septic tank.
Yeah.
And the lines coming out of here, 'cause you're gonna have parking lot. You get to a leach field. Yep. So, we're gaining, but very slowly. What?
Which one do you have to go to?
EMA.
Oh, okay.
Okay, guys.
Hi again.
So my name's Tyler, and I am one of you guys in Braxton, we do medical examiner investigation. And, so thanks for having us here, let us come in and kind of talk about what's going on. Did you guys get a copy of a letter that we drafted? It kind of just talks about a lot of things, really. And so I wanted to at least have a time to start talking about what happens in the post Dr. Meeker era. It could be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows? But I think it's never too soon to start talking about that. From what I've learned in the last 5 years of doing this is that it can be difficult to make it to every call. The first thing that happens is whoever tries to track down Dr. Meeker, and sometimes that can't happen. Sometimes he's in Hawaii, sometimes he's in OR. So last week, I happened to be working the reception desk at the clinic. Somebody called for Dr. Meeker. He was in OR. So the receptionist turned around and said, "Can you take this call?" I said, "Sure." So I did, and I just think it works right now because we can kind of limp along and make it happen. And we have enough investigators that can work together well enough. But I don't think that's always going to be that way. I want you guys to understand how it works. If you've never had to deal with it, hopefully you've never had to have one of us show up to a scene, but maybe you have, and it's just not always clear cut how it's supposed to work. Training is kind of lackluster. I try to point that out there in the letter. There's been a few good people that have carried it along for a long time, and when that stops, I just hate to see it fall off, because it is not optional. So the service is not optional. It's required by the county to do this death investigation for the state. I think it's going to take some better funding, better training, some help writing some policies, and disseminating a lot of the information around to the county agencies that we work aside. Questions?
How many calls you get a year? I know it changes from year to year, but the last 2 years have been kind of bad.
Yeah, that sounds
I think it was
about right.
right around 60 last year, plus or minus
60?
a couple.
I have history on an Excel sheet that goes back to
But a long
a
time.
long time, so.
Yeah.
So do you go out to every, like, my dad died at night and his sleep. So you go out to the farm then? Or
Supposed to. There is an option, so investigation is not required if you are on hospice, but even if you are 90, 100, 110, and you are, it's an obvious death of old age, but it is unwitnessed in the home, we are supposed to investigate that because hospice was not involved. So those cases are usually a little more simple. It's just some documentation, but that's not always the case, but yeah, so we are supposed to go to every unwitnessed, unattended death.
And that actually just came up last year because Dr. Meeker was doing like a jurisdiction declined on those because he didn't feel the need for investigation. And from my understanding, we actually talked to the state, and the state said you need to be investigating these deaths. So we don't even necessarily have the luxury to say, well, it's not. This doesn't seem like it needs investigation. Dr. Meeker was kind of told that it doesn't really matter what his thoughts are. If kind of his hospice is not involved, then it needs to be investigated, from my understanding.
Yeah, which definitely increases the number of investigated deaths moving forward from that time.
That's why Kim and myself were brought on, I believe, because he was kind of actively seeking. That was last August, so I think that happened last summer, and he started actively seeking a couple more people.
And was that right around the time maybe that he was advocating for the jurisdiction
Yeah,
plan?
that's when
the
we
fee
increased that
changes?
fee,
Yeah.
because there's more work and signing on the death certificates and stuff.
Yeah.
Who signed, if you guys do the investigating then, you know, on the untimely death, unattended death, who signs the death certificate? You guys then, or does the doctor make her?
It's, so Dr. Meeker, if there's no other attending physician listed, if you are, so I work at Virginia Gate, so I will use Virginia Gate doctors for example, just because that's what I know. If your primary care is Dr. Elgin, the death certificate will go to Dr. Elgin to sign if you are an Elgin patient, but otherwise, if you're coming through town, you know, in car accident on Highway 30, and you're from Illinois, Dr. Meeker is gonna sign the death certificate, from what I understand. So he, I would say, signs most of them. But they're populated with the information that we provide, and then it's all electronic. He logs into his system, he logs into his side of the Iowa Vital Event system.
So,
Signs it.
let's say there's a death down in Belle Plaine area.
Mhm.
It's gonna take you an hour and 15 minutes, just road time, to get from.
They got two people that work that area, right?
Yeah, so with the current line of investigators, Tyler and I live in Benton. Kim lives in Van Horn, and Katie lives in Atkins, and then Elena and Mindy, well, I think Mindy lives in Marengo, works in Belle Plaine, and Elena lives in Belle Plaine. So if that in theory is amazing, we have 2, 2, and 2. However, as we stated in our letter during the day, I'm the only one not at a full-time job. So, which we ran into last week, and that was really a huge pain.
Yeah, the investigator that would have been closest to last week's call was in OR with Dr. Meeker.
So, let's say somebody dies at 11 o'clock at night, then do you wait till the next day?
We go out at 11. As soon as EMS or law enforcement, I mean, EMS doesn't always get called most of the time, but if it's like completely obvious, law enforcement can just request medical examiner. We go immediately as soon as dispatch knows that, I mean, or whoever, sometimes EMS calls Dr. Meeker directly via cell phone and dispatch has no idea what's going on. It happens 10 different ways. And it's different, like Hiawatha covers Shelburne for EMS, so they don't call Dr. Meeker or Virginia Gate for a time of death, they call St. Luke's or Mercy for a time of death. So we're halfway out of the loop. The only reason we're in the loop is because Shelburne first responders are involved in that thing. So it's Atkins, we have nothing to do with Atkins, you know, until area ambulance does. So those areas, we don't even know what's going on half the time until we're called there, which I'll hit on a couple things thrown out there. I know that you guys probably knew Tony, Colleen, Mary, I'm sure everybody knows them. They are probably the 3 that held this together for a long time. They did this for a long time. And they're obviously not here anymore. They were all 3 also very actively involved with North Benton Ambulance, and therefore involved with Dr. Meeker for a long time. Only one of us now is involved with North Benton Ambulance, and it's Kim, and it's very part-time, like 1 or 2 shifts a month is what she's working there. So as Tyler said, we're kind of limping along, to use his words, and I personally, with my involvement that I had with EMS in the medical examiner's office, since coming into the medical examiner's office and seeing those 3 leave, I personally feel like I don't want to use the word decline, but I see a difference into how it is. Like, I mean, it would always be those 3 responding, and it was never like, are they going to come, or, you know, what do we do? Like, they were always there, I feel like. And the other thing I'll add to this conversation about the length of time and the drive, etc., that we hit on, and we're going to a 911 board meeting tonight. I don't know how much pull you have in this, but we've requested pagers from Scott Hansen. And it will only be 3 pagers because the other 3 are.
Since salary.com.
The other 3 are involved in EMS in other areas of the county, so they have pagers. But for the 3 of us that don't, and who actually are probably the most active 3, I would probably venture to say, don't have access to that. So when we know that a call is coming, sometimes that gives us upwards of an hour to know, okay, North Benton just went on something that sounds like a death. We're all involved in medical field, so we can kind of decipher from the text that dispatchers give sometimes. Okay, well, I was going to go to Cedar Rapids, or I was going to open a beer for that matter. I was going to do something. Okay, I'll wait to see if Dr. Meeker is going to call me. Or on the other side, hey, Dr. Meeker, saw this call come out. I'm not available right now, just so you know. Then he doesn't even waste his time calling me. So it really, really would help us to have pagers to know when something potentially is coming. And, you know, does that change our plans? Because that could really, if I'm the only one that's available and I was going to go to Cedar Rapids, I'm now not available anymore. And I could have known that ahead of time before I even left, or, you know, 100 other scenarios that could take place that could be solved with us just having a heads up that a call is coming. So like I said, I don't know how much pull is there, but we got turned down by Scott because we're not first responders. We have no emergent need to know. While that may be true, again, emergent or not, we are required. And when it's, you know, death investigators aren't showing up, that holds the entire line of everything up. Somebody has to stay with that body until we're done. So that's tying EMS up, that's tying law enforcement up. They can't just leave. Law enforcement is supposed to respond to every death. And EMS, whether obligated or for their policies, also feels the need to stay sometimes. So you have, you know, an ambulance crew, on which we know is short in the county, staying, a law enforcement officer tied up, a whole first responder service tied up, whatever it is, that really could be prevented or limited in the time that they are.
Has anybody, done any work on the average age of the, county? In other words, all the people in the county, the average age?
The demographics of it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure there's demographics from the last sentence.
I think you guys are gonna get busier instead of less busy. Because I think the average age of the county is going up.
Well, and I think the county population is growing too. Benton's building, Atkins is building. Atkins exploded seemingly overnight. Every time, so I work at a June Gateway clinic out there. Every time we go out there, it seems like there's another house gone up. So I don't know. I'll speak for myself here. I'm not looking for answers today. I wanted to use today as a starting point for the conversation about what we can do to make it better moving forward. Because I think having some clear definitions on what counts for a basic case versus an extreme case. We touched on that a little bit in the letter. Certain time frames. I've never submitted for mileage. Really didn't even know that I could. But you know, have you filled your truck up with gas lately? $125 does not go very far. So
when we do have to drive to Belle Plaine, you know that,
yeah,
a quarter of a tank of gas to Belle Plaine and back.
Oh, yeah.
My question is, just throwing this out here, I see you do have a, kind of listed here what you kind of propose of a raise. Would it be smarter than going with a raise, hire 2 more people? Put 2 more people on the payroll for this deal?
so that's
You know what I mean?
Then you have
That's
to
come
go
up
there
before.
for training and all that.
Well, we paid for 2 people here this in January, if I remember right.
The trouble with that, this has come up with, I've had that conversation specifically with Dr. Meeker, is if there's 8 or 10 of us, no one of us gets a lot of experience doing it. It's great it sounds great on paper, but when you go potentially 3 months without going to a call, and then you have 5 in a weekend, you know, you come into that first one kind of refreshing yourself on what you're supposed to do. We put together kind of a checklist of things that follow along with documentation that we do online. So to make it easier and a little more consistent. But to answer your question, I agree that it sounds good, But I also agree with Dr. Meeker that it would be hard to keep everyone trained and proficient.
Yeah, I'll hit on a couple things. That factors into one of the things that's also, I believe in the letter, is per state code, we're also supposed to obtain a diplomat of the American Board of Medical Death Investigators certification within 5 years of being in this job. To my knowledge, no one that's worked here has ever done that. And it is in the code. There's waivers that can be signed, but the waiver is like if you can't get the experience or if there's some like actual reason other than just we don't want to do it type of reason, that you are per se code supposed to obtain this. So that also factors in because it requires 600 hours of total like death investigation related things, whether it's autopsy, scene investigation, report writing, things related to death investigation count, but only so many hours. Like your education can count, but only for so many hours. Whereas death investigation can count for all of the hours. So I'll add that part. The second part is that would be largely unhelpful unless you've got 2 unemployed people or people who work from home and could go to these day calls. Because that's really where we see the most need is during the day. At nighttime, it maybe, it's hard sometimes, people don't want to leave or they're doing stuff or whatever, but I don't know that there's been a night call where we haven't found an investigator to go. But versus during the day is much harder. So 2 people, again, looks great on paper, but if they have jobs and, that could be, we'd still be in the same boat, you'd pay for 2 more people to be doing the same thing.
I brought this up when we met as a team, throwing it out there, like what would it look like for a full-time or part-time position with the county? And I know that's a lot because there's a salary, there's benefits to consider, there's a whole lot more than just an hourly wage to consider when you're talking about adding an FTE or a partial FTE to the county ledger. But I think it's worth adding to the discussion anyway to be helpful in those daytime hours. If there was one person being paid full-time that covered everything between, 7 and 7, might not go on any calls, but you're getting paid somehow, and then, I don't know how it would look, I say 7 arbitrarily, but again, it's just an idea.
Well, like when my dad passed away, he got up in the middle of the night, and he took his blood pressure and that, and he knew that he was gonna pass away. He went back to bed. I mean, he died in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
We didn't find him till 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and he didn't come out. We decided, well, we better go in and check. And
yeah.
So most of the calls are gonna be in the daytime, even if they happen at night,
I agree with that partially. That happens a lot of times. A lot of it is 2 o'clock in the morning car accidents.
Oh, yeah.
Those happen too. Highway 30 is a hot spot for car accidents.
Nobody got killed yesterday, I hope.
I didn't hear of anything.
There was 10 or 11 cars for the foiling hands.
Okay. Nope, I didn't hear of anything. We didn't get called.
I'll also add again that Tyler we just had a meeting in January. As mentioned, we're a young group for this office. Outside of Elena, Tyler has the most experience. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Okay, Tyler has the most experience. So we're relatively, young in age and young in experience with this. So we are trying to make things better by having meetings. We are semi-working on some policies and procedures. But as you know, Dr. Meeker is very busy, and it's hard to make time, when we're creating policy procedures for 3 hours on our own time, essentially. Not part of the work is volunteer. We volunteer to have a meeting because we want things to be better. But we don't want Dr. Meeker to leave and have nothing, because that's what's going to happen. And if Dr. Song, who is the only potential candidate to my knowledge, and I don't even know that he's a candidate, Dr. Meeker has just hinted that he hopefully will. I think that's Dr. Meeker's hope. If he doesn't take it, we're gonna have to contract with Cedar Rapids or something, and I don't think we want that. I hope that you don't want that, and so I think that if we are able to present to whoever it is, Dr. Song, a new doctor, here is your office. We have all of this done for you. There's nothing you need to do except sign stuff as it comes to you. I hope that they will be more apt to take this and leave us be as a county versus having to call Cedar Rapids medical examiner or pathologist or whatever it is, because it does have to be a physician. We can't contract like the ER does and have PAs or nurse practitioners. It has to be a physician in Iowa. So that's where we're going with this. Is we want this to be set up so that it can continue when we're gone, when Dr. Meeker's gone. Because right now, as you read, when people come in, it's whatever happens.
I got recruited at bowling. Dr. Meeker stepped out to
Yeah.
take a call, and I said, "Oh, do you have to go on all those calls?" And he said, "No, some people do that for me. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Sure."
I got a Facebook message.
So when he was explaining it to me, I got, briefly at the bowling alley, how it worked, he said to me, participation is not mandatory. And I don't know if that was a sales pitch for the physician, but after I started, I could see where that sentiment is kind of bothersome, because it is mandatory, it's required by law. I think what he was saying was, you don't always have to be the one that goes, because there are other people that will go, but then there have been instances where no one is available, so it's just not ideal. It's really not ideal.
This schooling, that's really kind of bothering me if it's required by state law to have 600 and some hours of schooling.
So the only class that's required is the one in St. Louis. That's required per state law. This is a certification. It's not schooling. It's like additional continuing education that you have to obtain, and then there's a test you have to take. It's intensive.
Did you find out if we could count those cases for hours that you've already?
Yes, anything within the last 5 years, right?
Yeah. So they'll look back 5 years. I was trying to ask Haley if she would sign off on 10 hours a case, just to help build up the number of hours, because all of the hours that you can count, all 640 hours as casework. Yes. But like if you have a bachelor's degree, that counts for some hours, like already just by having an education. And it goes up from there. Bachelor's degree, if you can have an associate's degree, PhD, those education levels count towards hours, but you still have to. You can get points by viewing autopsies. You can get points by investigating scenes, and there's different levels of scene investigation that count. If it's an extensive investigation, or if it's dad passes away at night, and we're just there to say, yep. Those don't count for as much, but if we're, if it's a criminal case, say, where there is a lot more work, then those count for more points.
So how many hours would you have to go to be served for everything's cool by the state? How many hours, do you have any idea how many hours is left?
How many is left?
It would vary between everybody.
Yeah.
We have to do a tally on we keep track of what investigators went to what case. So I have the history there, so if you guys are okay, I don't have a problem helping them sign off and obtain those hours, if it's acceptable.
And everybody's like different levels of education, and like Tyler's been doing this longer, obviously, so he has more investigations. And what that does, I know that it seems like a pain. I mean, it seems like a pain for us too, but that really gives us credibility because with 600 hours, you're going to obtain experience. Like there's no way to do 600 hours of anything like half ass and not obtain experience through it. So then when we are doing the investigations, or this will help us with the policies and procedures. If we have to go to court, which I know is rare, but I know has happened. With, like I said, Colleen, Mary, Tony, I know they've all been in court before, so And as you said, the population is growing, we're gonna be busier, which increases our chances of going to court, of going to criminal investigations. So that's what that really does, is add credibility. The organization is, it's like the organization for death investigators. It's the national organization that is very well known.
Yeah, we're just asking for some help. Because I think it will need to be a smooth transition when it does happen, from Dr. Meeker to whoever it's gonna be, like Braxton was saying, just to hand off, you know, you're gonna take this over, and this is how it works. It's really simple. The investigators have a good handle on it, so it's not a perfect system. I don't think Benton County is big enough to have a full-time dedicated staff like some counties do. Polk County, Lynn County, Johnson County, they all have full-time medical examiner staff. Johnson County does too.
As you guys know, we just had a bundle from Lynn County we just paid today, so they're kind of stockpiling and sending. Were you asking about that?
So
There's at least 4 or 5.
There's pretty more than that, actually.
But it would be interesting, as Tyler related to see how the workload worked for one person, for one staff. I don't know that that's the answer, but it is something that has been thought of. Would one person stay busy enough between cases, policies, procedures? I mean, there's a lot of other stuff to do that we're finding out besides just death investigations. It's not just always go to the scene, write a report, and you're done. I mean, that's the minimum amount, but that's, if we want this to be a better office, that's not all that needs to be done.
Right.
Or part-time or whatever.
I don't think that would work, because I would just push the pencil here, using your 60 calls. You know what I mean? Take that by 250 on the lower end. That's only $15,000 for the year.
Yeah.
Just in you know, that's on the cheap side. Now, if we go to the expensive side, each one was a $500 fee. Now you're jumping up to $30,000. Okay, still ain't enough to keep somebody full time on benefits. Now, the other thing, if you could find somebody would do it, I don't care, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. 7 days a week, 365 days a week, or a year, 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
Especially if you had 2 untimely deaths, one in Atkins, one in Mount Auburn. That guy, somebody's gonna have to wait until he's done, you know. So to me, hiring one person won't work, my opinion.
Well, the system that we currently have with Dr. Meeker and the examiners works.
Yes.
And will it continue that way? Depends if somebody will step in Dr. Meeker's
Right.
place. To hire a full-time or even 2 full-time people is something that's not gonna be affordable, not for the county. It's something that may have to be taken on by the, you know, personnel, by the hospitals, okay? And so I don't think that's what they're here for today. They're just alerting us to down the road. What they're here for today is the increase in their fees. I see that being totally justified for the amount of time put in. I could also see that we would throw in mileage for that. Now, the way the system currently is, it works out pretty good, and you really aren't gonna have Benton people running to Belle Plaine. Atkins is already covered, you don't even know what's going on over there, you said. And so there shouldn't be horrendous amounts of mileage, but I do get it. You know, the gas pump hurts each and every one of us. And so when they're pulling out of their pocket, even with an increased amount, you know, that smarts, it really does. So the case at hand is whether or not we're gonna go with an increased fees. And if that's enough, or we're gonna add mileage. So, am I right? That's what we're here today for.
yeah, that to start that conversation,
Yeah.
definitely. If you're willing to look at the increased fees and think that that is reasonable,
Well,
it's
from
a
what
good place to start. And then, again, if, just looking at what's it gonna look like in 10 years?
Yeah.
That,
we have no idea.
Right.
Possibly within 10 years, you might be out looking at me, so who knows?
So and that's a harsh reality that you learn in doing this, is that it can all change in a day.
Yes, and Buchanan County, according to what you presented to us as far as current comparable counties, et cetera, they're at $640 for each call. And $435 if they're at the hospital. And it looks like the supervisors are trying to do some other proposed item. That's just proposed, we don't know if it's even gonna work. So, you know, I don't have a problem with increasing their fees. I really don't. It's gonna keep good people interested and pay them for their time. I can tell you, after being on the ambulance service, you get called out in the middle of the night, you don't go back to sleep. It just doesn't happen. So that adrenaline kicks in and you're up.
And a lot of it depends on the funeral service. You know, we have funeral services that are coming from Des Moines, and somebody's got to stay there because that, like, by law, the medical examiner's office takes jurisdiction over the body. I've sat by myself before and waited for a funeral home to show up 2, 3, 4 hours before I get any documentation done. So yeah, it can be. It's not always
right,
but it can be a lot of time.
So regarding the proposed increases, is there any discussion on that?
Well, if you wanna add mileage on it, I would say, there again, put a 10 or 15 mile.
I don't know that you can put a limit on it.
Just paying the same rate that the federal, what we're paid currently probably.
Because if you say you can only go within 15 miles, that's where you were heading, isn't it?
Yes, I was gonna say the first 10 miles, you're not gonna get paid. Like, if you're in Benton here and had to go to Belle Plaine, then yeah, you should be paid the whole trip.
Yeah.
But if you were in Atkins, like Katie, and she's on the southeast side of town there, and then she's gotta go to the northwest side of town, you know, is it worth screwing around for a mile?
And that's why I never submitted it.
Right, I'm probably not gonna submit for Benton, but I would submit for Belle Plaine, like.
And I don't
Yeah,
remember.
going to Shelford or something like that.
You know, we are, as a board, allowed mileage. Now, I don't have the drive these guys has, you know, but I don't even submit it for any of my meetings that are outside of town. I try to do the Zoom while I can, but to me, submitting it's a pain in the butt. So, you know, and do I really need that added to my, you know, W-2? So, you know,
It's another thing that I considered is you just gotta pay taxes on it.
exactly. So, you know, unless there's other discussion, I would make a motion that we approve their proposed medical examination fees. I would even include that they invoice for mileage.
So do you wanna say what those proposed fees were in your motion?
Proposed fees for the standard cases being defined as no more than 3 hours of investigation. It's $375. $250 of that goes to the investigator, and $125 goes to the
Physician oversight.
There you go, thank you. In this case, it's Dr. Meeker, okay, or whoever he chooses. And then on the extreme cases, or cases that require more than 3 hours of investigation, it is $625, $500 for the investigator, and $125 for the, gentleman doing the overseeing.
And then you leave JD's the same jurisdiction defined as 100?
Yeah, because that doesn't come through us at all.
Right, okay,
And
just
it
making sure we
doesn't
don't.
sound like that's really something that can be done.
Not often,
Yeah.
No,
No, not,
Yeah.
we don't get very many of
Cruising.
them now.
Yeah,
It's like you said, if hospice is in there, then they
Yep.
can do that.
Yeah.
so that is my motion, yes.
Mileage.
I added mileage, didn't I?
Yep, you said include invoices for mileage.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
thank you, gentlemen.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the mileage I'll put in there at whatever the current rate is, cause that changes.
You guys have any suggestions for us tonight at the 911 board meeting? Is that, I mean, is there any involvement or is that totally separate? Totally separate?
I will say, it might be hard to get radios because,
Pagers, we've already gotten radios, those aren't a problem.
okay,
Those were given to us.
Yeah.
Pagers are for some reason the issue and we only.
What's the cost of the pagers? I'll call Scott, I'll ask him.
some of that stuff is already here and already disseminated.
Yeah, so he has some extras in his office, so that's why we went there and he said they're short. But it sounds like if the 911 board says give them pagers, then he has enough pagers to give us. That's why I'm kind of confused. Like, I mean, as of right now, it's him and Ron deciding that we don't need them. So I mean, it sounds like they're short, but it sounds like they're enough. So I wasn't sure if you guys had any advice or any role in that at all as to.
That's the 911.
Okay. Is there anything that you'd, like to see from us, further information than what's in there right now? Is there any next steps you'd like us to follow up with?
I guess as Dr. Meeker gets closer to pulling the plug and actually retiring, keep us informed. It may not be this particular board members, but it would be good if you guys.
Cause the appointments we do every 2 years, so it'll be on next
Okay.
this January for all the reappointments.
Okay.
So it's a 2-year term too.
There's only two physicians in Benton County, to my knowledge, that are MDs, right? Three?
And
Is it LJ?
Chelsea?
Oh, there's four positions at Virginia Gay. They're NDDO. Yeah.
So DOs could sign off on
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Really?
That's Dr. Meeker.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's Dr. Meeker.
I think all four positions are DOs at.
So like some of the doctors at the clinics could sign up with too?
What clinics?
Oh, like Van Horn?
Oh, it's PA. Rita's a PA, the two in Atkins are PAs, Urbana's the nurse practitioner and a PA.
You would have to have them as appointed as president under a nurse investigator. But yeah, you have to either have, cause I think in the years past when Dr. Dearden was here, Meeker was the ME and then Dearden was the deputy ME, like if he was out of town.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to.
I'm happy to send Haley all the codes and stuff too, if she can forward them to you guys if it's something you'd like to look at.
Is it some of those I shared with you? I have them PDF, I think already.
Yeah, you could just Google like state code, Iowa Medical Examiner's
Cause
Office.
I
and it
remember when
pops
you
up.
guys first took office, remember you were questioning how that worked, and why we had to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you guys coming and explaining all that to
Yeah.
them, because some of it I was like, I don't know, it's in the code, we have to do it.
Well, this $600 schooling deal, if you were gonna go do that, actually go get that, that's a third of the year. I mean,
But now we have 3 of you guys have already obtained that, right? You two and, Kate.
Are you talking about the continuing
St.
education
Louis
thing?
one.
Yeah, we've all done St. Louis.
Yeah.
Everybody's been through St. Louis, which is
And
the
then-
first required thing you have to do.
So you will see too, your other stuff for your training stuff is supposed to arrive Thursday.
Perfect, thank you. The baby?
Yep, the dolls. But then you guys talked about the books too, we need to get together, but you're gonna share those, correct?
Yeah, we're gonna start with the library at his office, so we can check them out.
Those I have not ordered, so you'll have to get with me to.
Yeah.
Cause I would make sure it's tax exempt and stuff.
Yeah, that's, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's just kind of another another example of how it's just kind of been limping along. I know a lot of the files have been stored at the hospital. They're technically county files. You know, if something ever happened up there, you know, this decades of files could just go missing.
Because years ago, Dr. Meeker would bring us an original, they would have the pictures and all that, because now they do some of that uploading. And then we would pay off of those, send it to the state, and then give the county attorney a copy. So now it's a lot of it's on scan back and forth, which is.
So you guys get copies too? Then?
Yes, I get the scan, that's how I pay you guys and keep on file, because I have to give one to the county attorney still.
Well, yeah, it's just a little bit of stuff all over.
If something else arises, please talk to Haley and she'll let us know. We're more than happy to come back anytime and answer questions or anything on behalf of the office.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anytime you know there's gonna be a pathologist or an autopsy, it's nice to give me a heads up sometimes, because sometimes I'll get bills and I won't even have the report of the case yet.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
that way we kinda know and keep them combined.
Sounds good.
Very good.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good morning, Myron.
Morning. Under old business, last month, we talked about Title VI non-discrimination that we signed, and then was just preceding a compliance review that I had that the DOT needs to do routinely. County first signed that agreement, I think, back in 2013. It's actually supposed to be being updated every 5 years, or every time positions change with the county. But during that compliance review, bouncing around here, I'm not coordinated enough to do two things at one time. One thing that was brought to my attention is that this first, I was given the template, the first sheet that I just handed to you is Title VI non-discrimination notice to public. That should be preferably, or posted on your official bulletin board, but then also probably on our website. Where makes it easier for those, if there is a concern that discrimination has happened in the county, that they know who to contact, where to go. In conjunction with that, they had mentioned Cassuth County that had done this recently, and I have his template on the complaint form that I've given you a copy of, that they suggested having access to off the website as the Title VI coordinator. If a non-discrimination complaint form would be filed, I just forward it to the DOT and just a collection site. It's not something that I would be able to determine whether there's discrimination or not. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, that we could add to our website and.
What do you wanna put that under transportation?
In Cassuth County, they created its own page, kind of,
Okay.
Title VI, I think, or something, I don't know.
Maybe I'll ask Metropolitan Labs again and see what they do.
During our review, a couple of questions that I didn't have an answer to that I thought we could ask, and just go over a little bit here quick today. I think looking at your January minutes, you do have an ADA coordinator assigned. Is that Jerry Michaels? Okay, because that was another question that was asked during the compliance review, is whether the county had an ADA coordinator, who it was. They also asked whether Benton County has an organizational chart. At one time, I think Joe was working on one or doing something many years ago, but I think the biggest interest that Civil Rights has from an organizational chart is that whoever you appoint, assign as the Title VI coordinator, do they report directly to the Board of Supervisors, or is it just a staff person out there? And so, if we don't have a chart, they're asking that we create one
show that information with county individuals. And the other question that came up during our compliance review had to do with limited English proficiency. Whether the county has a plan or a policy. Now, going through the demographics a little bit as Ritchie Management was talking earlier, we went to the Census Bureau the day of the compliance deal. According to the census, I think Benton County's population decreased a tiny bit, but we do have, according to the census, 1.6% of Benton County residents that are Hispanic. Scenario that was thrown at me at the compliance review is that if somebody came to the Board of Supervisors meeting and wanted to listen to it, or came to the courthouse and were a non-English speaking individual, what's the county's plan, practice? Do we have a translator? What do we do? And granted, our demographics are such that wouldn't happen very often, but it certainly could. And, from the service center, from a DHS standpoint, there are some non-English forms at the doorway. But, courthouse proper, if somebody came to front door, and security was confronted with somebody that doesn't speak English, what's the county do? Do we have a plan? If we don't, we need to think about it. And, whether you hire a translating service, whether you have staff people that are fluent enough in certain languages that would be your contact, I don't know, but that possibility comes up, could come up, let's put it that way. And how are we gonna address it when it does? And maybe a little like your discussion just a little bit ago, is it better to have a plan in place ahead of this versus being confronted with it unexpectedly, and what are we gonna do? Sure.
I've seen other counties when they're hiring, they do put that in there, fluent in other languages. Beneficial, but.
The rest of our clients was going over what forms, particularly contracts, DOT administer, is there all of the required language in there, things along those lines. But the biggest thing I wanted to bring to you today from that compliance review is the notice and the complaint form, and then the organizational chart and the limited English proficiency plan moving forward. Other than that, I didn't need any of your time other than with the compliance review that when I met with them, I signed off that I gave them everything that I had. They asked if I could get the chairman's signature that I came back and talked to you about what you just heard. And didn't feel it needed a specific agenda item, and Monday I was a little busy with the weekend.
Yeah. County had some damage too.
I can talk a little bit. She raised it for more.
Actually, I think
I can understand it.
I used to have a staff member that had some
I got my little cheat sheet from my Mexican.
fluency in some other languages. I don't, at the moment, but I don't know. The sheriff's department may have
We used to
some.
have a list of translators, because we would pay certain ones for different things over to the jail, but I don't know.
There's only so much you really need to know.
Well, I can see a problem with security courthouse. I mean,
Somebody come in for court or something.
well, or even to come in to, go to the treasurer's office or the driver's license department, I can see issues with that. Go up to the clerk of court. And there are programs, I think, that you can get apps for your phones to translate. And maybe that's something the sheriff needs to look into.
I'll have to look in the actual folders if we have that chart. I have a folder for having for this stuff, but I don't see any chart, so.
With pandemic and you going to your virtual meetings, if somebody, were blind and wanted to get some information, you know, you do have audio, you know, so you've gotten some, you've created some solutions indirectly.
But even our website design for like color blindness and that, we had to be cautious on all those kind of things. Yeah, colorblind.
I just wanted to bring you that information and let you know. Being it was Benton County's really first official compliance review, there wasn't anything that was gonna be held against the county from a starting point, but moving forward, they're hoping that their staff is at a position, and now that all those things changed, that they're hoping to get around the state on a 5 to 6 year rotating basis, and expect to see advances in some of the deficiencies with future compliance reviews.
So Dan will put this on
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna,
the
or I
website.
can talk to Brian at our, the Neapolitan Labs, so maybe we can do like a neutral place. And we'll have the complaint form and the statement.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that we should have on there? Our policy, do we have to have the actual policy or just the statement?
Just the notice and the complaint form on, I know, since they're looked real close, the non-discrimination the statement was on the transportation's page in the past. And I mentioned that to you, that we would wanna update that date. Like I say, the policy hasn't changed at all in verbiage. But I believe that with federal funds being received through transportation, that was probably a requirement on their web page when that was being developed, that needed to be there. Now, it could be linked. Like I say, looking at some of the other county websites, they have just put that in with Title VI, and that web pages that want access to that could just put a link on that would take you to the neutral page or whatever.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, sir?
Yeah.
And Nancy was working on uploading the photos today.
What's that?
Those
If
photos
that's all
to
there is
send
to
to
drink no more,
Heartland.
I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.